Check, baby. Check, baby. 175. Boom. 75% master recording volume. Waiting on the side of the road, easy on the way, easy on the way. Wow, interesting. Finding my picks. Yeah. Don't go too crazy. To get used to switching string gauges, and also when you switch between like a mandola to a regular guitar, you have worn different tracks in your fingertips, right? So that will mean contact with the fretboard or the sound plate is interrupted because the gap is too wide now to hold the string in place, right? Next to the fret. I started on steel string, right? Because at the time, acoustic was more affordable because you had to have like a big amp, right? And in the turn of the 90s, metal was still a big deal, right? You had the switch over from rock and roll, essentially, to hip-hop becoming dominant, right? That didn't happen for a while. Hip-hop was small in the beginning. I mean, just thinking back to reality, and I'm like, has reality shifted that much? For me, it did, yeah, absolutely. wasn't video games. It was self-expression, right? It's a big deal. And so in high school, it became a point that you were not a preppy, right? But when you first go in, you don't know how all those clicks work, kind of, I guess. I was a kid smoking cigarettes on the corner. I guess that was me. Not the first year. I was clean cut. Yep. But add a divorce and see what happens to you emotionally. You know what I'm saying? That's what happened to me. And then I just said, I don't give a shit. You know what? Screw Mormonism and all this conservative bullshit. They can have that. Well, I'm conservative in my own way, but in a folkish way. So I decided at an early age it was better to be an elf. You can laugh at me if you want. And I don't mean some silly little bullshit. Like Tuatha De Danann, you know, the other one. But I was a wood elf out on the range. We all have our little escapes, you know. Time to read, but I just put new strings like right before I came on. Anyway, take a break, read, come back to that, work on it. Yep. Playing the classical for a while. Okay. So let us see. It's always good to do a little preview. All right. We're just going to do this. Chapter 10, The Search. Fall winds scored the countryside. Their crisp, chill dampness was tangy with the foretaste of the coming winter. The emerald meadows had faded to the dull gray-brown of a weathered thatch roof, and the sky was a sodden cloak of rumpled gray wool. Only the trees added any note of warmth to the scene, with their leaves and the last flame of autumn's colors. The winds had already stripped much of this glory and were moaning in the naked branches like banshee keening for the coming death of a loved one. Across this desolate landscape moved a forlorn company of men, the Fian warriors of the Bashin clan. Following a Finn Maccoomhall who pressed on doggedly. They were beginning to look a somewhat worn lot, a bit leaner and a bit threadbare, and expressions of all save the determined Finn were uniformly glum. They crossed a ridge, reaching a place where the land dropped off more sharply, providing a view of a broad, rolling countryside that stretched far away. It looked rather bleak, with only scattered patches of bare woods and no rising plume of smoke or cattle herd or circle of wrath walls to give sign of any human habitation. Finn stopped there, his eyes moving slowly, searchingly over the scene ahead. His young face was set in a frown of concentration that had furrowed his brow, drawn down. Curving lines about his tightly drawn mouth and crinkled the corners of his narrowed eyes. The dogs, as always, were close at either hand, but the others of the band, including Cowlight, had stopped some way behind. As he examined the countryside, they huddled together in what seemed an intense discussion in muted tones, accompanied by much sharp gesticulation, and by occasional glances toward the back of the young captain from one or another of the warriors. Cowlight was apparently the focus of this group, much of the talk directed toward him. While his response was more of a troubled glance, while his response was largely the shaking of his head. But finally, after giving one more troubled glance toward the lonely figure of his comrade, he sighed in an unhappy way and nodded. He moved away from the group and started toward Finn, then hesitated, looking back at the rest. They all stood watching him, their attitudes tense and expectant, their expressions hopeful. Cowlight sighed heavily again and went on. Stopping at Finn's side. "Finn," he began, in an uncharacteristically hesitant way. "What?" Finn asked tersely, not turning his gaze from its intense perusal of the distance. "It's the other lads. They've been talking, Finn. And they wanted me to speak to you." "What about?" Finn said flatly, his attention still elsewhere. "Well, it's how fast the weather's changing that they're thinking of. The fall is well on us now. Winter's coming. You can smell it heavy in the air." "I suppose you can," Finn agreed, appearing finally to register the words in the ominous tone of his comrade. He turned to regard him with a piercing look. "Tell me your meaning, Cowlight. Say it out plain." "All right, then," the Dark Warrior said more stoutly. "They're thinking that it's time we gave this up." "Gave it up?" Finn said with shock. "But we can't give it up. We've only begun the searching." "We've searched the summer through, Finn, and through the fall. The men have to think of their winter quarters and now of their families." "Their families?" Finn cut in outrage. "Is that what you're thinking of? Their warmth, their comfort?" Cowlight stepped closer, this voice dropping to become hard, intense, and scolding. "Now you listen to me, Finn Maccoomhall. What you've said is unfair, and you know it, as well as I. It's a long, hard way they've come with you, searching across the most rugged and barren parts of the Ireland. They've gone without food and even drink, sometimes. They've gone without rest or even a warming fire to follow this mad quest on, and never a complaint have you heard. This argument had no effect on Finn other than to fuel his rage. How dare you talk that way to me, he said. It's Fionn men you're speaking of. No labor is too much. It's only their loyalty to me they should be thinking of. But they betray me like this. Before Cowlight could stop him, he wheeled and stalked to the waiting men. So you'd abandon me? He shouted at them bitterly. You think yourselves men of Fionn, my own clansmen, who I thought at least would support me. Now, when I'm in most need of your help, you act in treachery. They exchanged bewildered looks at this scathing outburst. We don't mean to abandon you, Luke Haig tried to explain earnestly. We think it's yourself you should give over this search, Finn. It's useless. You'll not find one fawn in all the wild places of Ireland for a lifetime of hunting. Likely she's been hidden by the Druid's power, and no mortal can find the dwelling of the she without their allowing it. Why, we may have already passed the place where Sob's been taken and not known it. You've got to give it up, or you'll destroy yourself. I'll not give it up, he said. There is no life for me without her, don't you see? I'll search every sleeve and every glen until I find her, or I'll die in the searching. Luke Haig looked around at his fellows, all grim-faced, as he was shaking their heads in doubt, as they were shaking their heads in doubt. Then he met Finn's eyes again with resolve. My captain, if you persist in this, then it's truly a madness that's on you. And you don't quit and come with us. If you don't take up your life again, then we'll not follow, for it's as man-possessed, as not as our leader, that you want this. Now we mean to go back to Almhuin. Will you go with us? I will not. You are cowards and traitors to me, not ones fit to call yourself Fionn fighting men, and have no more to do with you. I will go on. With only my 2 hounds to search through Ireland, go back then to the safety of Almhuin, and the bloody Morrigan take the lot of you. He wheeled and strode away, brushing past Cowlight, returning to the waiting hounds. Well, lads, he told them, if you'll still have loyalty to myself and to Sob, follow me. He stalked on, starting down the slope. The hounds followed without hesitation. Were he any other man, said Luke Haig angrily, stepping to Cowlight, I would have given him challenge for those insults. If you had, you would have died, Cowlight told him bluntly, looking after the figure striding so determinedly away. He is a troubled and desperate man. He is a man unhinged, Luke Haig harshly replied, and not the Finn MacCoomhole who was our captain. Will not follow him. Will turn back to Almhuin. Will you join us? No, said Cowlight, with a resigned look. No. Much as I may agree with you, I can't abandon him. I don't blame you for what you're doing. But if he's mad, he needs help more than ever, and a guardian as well. Your loyalty is commendable, Luke Haig said. But it may kill you along with him. Then I'll meet you next time in blessed lands, Cowlight told him. With a game smile and turning, he started after Finn. So the company parted. The band of warriors watched their departing captain for a time. Finally, with an air of reluctance and sorrow, they turned and made their way slowly back in the direction they had come. But the trio of man and dog, soon joined by the second man, went on into the new empty lands, moving purposefully ahead and not looking back. Grab a drink. Oh, yeah. Don't get lost. Oh, I got it. The four figures seemed very tiny and very lost in the midst of the vast white wasteland. Snow raggedly blanketed the ground and more blew down from a gray-white sky. Up to 80. A sharp wind drove the ice particles along the ground, scoring the surface, sweeping it bare in some spots and piling it with drifts in others. The two hounds went ahead, breaking a path, wallowing ahead through the deepest parts, at times using their broad chests to plow away behind them. The men fought their way along, bodies wrapped tightly in their cloaks, faces burnished to glowing redness by the stinging blasts in the storm, undistinguishable, save for the fair and dark hair streaming out around their heads. Finn staggered and dropped to one knee. Cowlight moved up quickly to help him rise, but Finn shook him off in an irritated gesture and rose alone, starting right on again. Cowlight fell in close behind him. "Why do you keep going on?" he said, shouting to be heard over the wind, his voice hoarse, creaking with the cold. "We've had no food in 2 days now, no rest. This will kill us soon. We have to stop." The others seemed not to hear, just pushing stubbornly, mechanically on. Cowlight caught his arm and swung him round. He looked into a face much like death, already gaunt and hollow-eyed, darkened with stubble, chapped by wind, lips cracked and blackened with dried blood. A face that was almost a mirror of his own. "All you'll achieve is to die here," Cowlight reasoned brutally. "We'll all die here. Every moment we rest is another moment she is in his power," Finn said in a rasping drone, like a man repeating an incantation in his sleep. "Dying won't help her," shouted the Dark Warrior. "We don't even know where we are. I can't see, neither can you. We've got to find a place to rest." Some sanity seemed to return to Finn's bleary eyes at that. He shook his head dazedly. "Maybe you're right," he said, looking around at the white wasteland. "But where?" "We passed that abandoned Roth not too far back," Cowlight told him. "We could find shelter there, at least for tonight. Maybe this snow will stop." "All right then," Finn said. He looked to the two hounds and gestured back in the direction they had come. "That way, lads," he shouted to them. They understood, turning about to start back along the path they had just plowed. The two men falling in behind, none was aware that their plight was being observed by a gloating Fiordorsh. He stood behind the lounging Melukrod in the snug quiet of the seer's crystal globe, which seemed to hover just above the four as they struggled on through the waist-high drifts. "That stubborn fool! He'll never survive," he said, with a chuckle of sadistic pleasure. "He's nearly alone, wandering aimlessly and half frozen now. Oh, this is too great a treat, to have him torture himself so willingly for me. and to be able to watch him do it as well. I thought you might be interested in seeing this, she said, her head back, not watching the painful scene. Still, she went on more guardedly, he's not an easy man to destroy. It would be a grave mistake to underestimate his powers. Your constant warnings tire me, woman, he shot back, and they interrupt my entertainment. He moved close to the curving surface, his gaze fixed avidly upon the struggling form. Could we move nearer? He asked. I want to see every mark of suffering on his face. If you wish, she said, without any enthusiasm of her own. She waved a hand carelessly toward the images, and the bubble seemed to drop lower, to drift just above and before the young captain. Oh, she said, in a most careless way, her voice neutral, but her full lips parted in a malicious smile. I do have another bit of information. It's about your little fawn. Yes? What about her? He asked impatiently, really paying attention in his absorption. Her head lifted and her eyes fixed on his back, clearly eager to observe his reaction. Well, she said slowly, savoring each word, I've been watching her at times as you ordered. I'm afraid there's a small problem. This caught his attention. He whirled toward her, his expression now one of concern. Problem? He repeated. What do you mean? Isn't she well? Isn't she looked to? I said she was to be kept safe. Oh, she's quite safe, Malakrod assured him, and quite secure. She has a snug little den in a sheltered vale she can't escape. She's supplied with food. No, it's not that. She smiled more widely. It's that your lovely, precious, perfect sob is not quite what you think anymore. Explain, woman, he thundered, stepping up to loom over her threateningly. I've discovered what you have not, she answered, smugly. I've sensed and seen the life growing in her, sensed the warmth in her, seen the soft belly of the slender body begin the first swelling. Your sob, my druid, is going to have a child. What? He said, stunned by the revelation. A child? He repeated, driving it home hard. And my seer's powers tell me that it is the child of Finmakumhol. Whoa. She laughed openly, callously and delightedly. Your sob has given herself to his charms, it seems. You have truly and completely lost her now. No, he raged, swung out at the grinning face, the back of his hand catching her cheek, knocking her back. He thrust the silver tip of his rod against her throat, pressing her back against the cushions, the metal denting her flesh at the hollow of her throat. You treacherous hag! I should turn you to the she-wolf that you are. You won't change the truth, she said, still smiling as he rubbed her bruised cheek. And it's worth this pain to see the look on you. The great Druid made a fool by this little girl. You wanted yourself to win her, and now the flower is despoiled. Destroy her. Be rid of her. I will not, he said impatiently, jerking the rod from her neck and turning away with the first shock of this discovery. Past he was now considering it. With the first shock of this discovery past now considering it. Clearly rationalizing. It makes no difference. It's her love I want. And that This creature Macumhal forced himself upon her will not change my feelings. It only gives me the greater reason to see him dead. You can't mean that, she said, her gloating look slipping to one of dismay. What about his child? Yes, his child, Druid said musingly. Yes, his child. Much as I loathed the idea of the thing, to harm it would only turn her more against me. Then his face brightened with an evil glow. But maybe Macumhal has given me another way to revenge myself upon him, while winning her as well, yes. He paced around her on the cushioned floor of the sphere, deeply engrossed in this new idea. Malakrad's concerned gaze followed him. What do you mean, she asked. What will you do? He stopped and looked down at her with an exultant smile. While I'll let the child live, he proclaimed. More I'll nurture it, give it a place of comfort in my Sid. That will show her my love, perhaps will change her. It will change nothing, she spat out contemptuously. You're a fool to think otherwise. How blind this love has made you, how dangerously weak. What do you know about it, you poor, loveless creature? He said with scorn. Then he went on in a voice now soft with cunning. Besides, even if my kindness does not move her, think of the weapon I will have. How can she deny me with the fate of her own child at stake? He chuckled in a slow, deep, greedy way and began to pace again, going over the details of his plan in careful, loving detail. I will have her this time. I'll see her brought here for the winter. She'll have fine quarters, and I'll put her own form upon her again until the child is born. Then it will be human, yes. Then it will make her agony all the greater. For to be human and her not, why that notion would be intolerable. He stopped and fixed his triumphant gaze on the scowling druidess. Do you see? Then she will be most anxious to accept my love, to save herself and her child. He wheeled toward the image of Finn struggling in the snow. His face grew hard with cruelty once again. But you, Macumhal, you have earned my greatest wrath. I'll not be content now to see you suffer there or to tolerate any possibility of your surviving. No, I want to be certain that you die. And I want a part in killing you myself. How can that be? She asked in alarm. You can't risk facing him. I won't face him, he told her. No, I won't need to. The storm will do it for me. With only a little of my power to twist it to my end. Watch, my Malakrad. He lifted his druid rod, pointing the silver tip end upward toward the gray clouds arching across the top of the sphere. Powers of the sky, he intoned solemnly. Great spirits of the winds and snow, I command you to obey my will. The silver tip began to glow, the hard white light growing swiftly to an almost blinding intensity. The clouds began to coil and writhe as if new shifting winds were tugging at them. Concentrate your storm upon this spot, he called to the skies. Bring all your force to bear here upon these four. The clouds grew darker, heavier, their bellies swelling downward toward the ground. They churned. They boiled. As if vast energies were stirring within them, they descended upon the men and hounds like a herd of enormous, monstrous beasts, leaping upon some very small and very helpless prey. Finn and his companions found themselves suddenly at the heart of a blizzard of most overwhelming proportions. The wind slammed at them from what seemed all directions at once. Striking with all the power of a great club, they tore at the men as if to rip their clothes away. The snows came so thickly that the countryside was lost to view behind a solid screen of white. "Where did this come from?" Cowlight shouted, to be heard above the shrieking wind. "I've seen no storm like this ever before." "I don't know," Finn called back. "But we've got to keep going." Reaching the raft may be our only chance. "Where is it?" Cowlight asked, trying to look around him. "I don't even know our direction anymore." "The lads will have to find it," Finn said. "Bronskilon," he called to them. "Bronskilon." "It's up to you. Find the Roth." Obediently, the hounds pressed on, Finn and Cowlight following, holding fast to the animals' long tails. In the blinding snow, even a separation of a spear's length was enough to cause one to be lost. They staggered ahead, moving ever more slowly against the punishing wind and the drifting snow. And it was piling around them, growing deeper almost by the instant. The white clung to them, coating to them, encasing them in ice. Soon they were barely moving, the snow rising like the great sea waves, flowing over them and covering them as they tried to flounder on. The last view Malakrad and Fyodor's had of them was a glimpse of Braun's head, struggling valiantly to rise above the crest of a great drift before sinking out of the sight. Then the curtain of snow fell across the scene, and the swirling white hiding all from their view. "There, woman," the dark druid crowed triumphantly, looking to her. "Do you see? Not so difficult a task as you have thought. A little of my powers and the long quest of your young captain is finally at its end." Okay. And then will be book 2. Interesting. The Wanderings of Finn. Cool. All right. And that will start on. Okay. Interesting. So you have 2 books in one, maybe 3. That's awesome. All right. So the next one is chapter 11, More Treachery. Cool. Turn it up, don't get nervous on camera, and overtune, baby. So cold out here. Anyway, I'm going to work with this Patriot a little bit more on tuning. Anyway. Way down. Thank you. I shall return.